What's up, y'all, and welcome into the Jack Vita Show. I'm your host, Jack Vita. We have a fantastic guest, so gracious with his time joining us today. Just got back from the MLB Draft Combine. We're going to talk a little bit about some draft stuff today. If you guys like what you hear, please subscribe to the program here on YouTube or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And without much further ado, this is the guy who's been at MLB Pipeline since the very beginning. Is that right, Jonathan Mayo?
Yes, that's true. Thanks for making me feel old.
No, it makes you a legend.
Sure, we'll go with that. That sounds much better.
Legend. He's been around and an expert. He's got a lot of expertise. One of the questions that I got a lot of after our last episode that I taped with Jim a couple weeks ago, people want to know people are like, okay, I'm confused. So you can trade some draft picks, but not all draft picks. How does that work? Because for the longest time, you couldn't trade any draft picks. How does the draft pick trading work?
Right. The the ability to trade some picks, and it's just the competitive balance round picks, started when those rounds were added in. The That may have been two collective bargaining agreements ago, and there's rounds A and B. They come after the first round and after the second round, and I won't get into the weeds of how they decide who gets those picks, but it's a combination of smaller markets, lower revenue, that sort of thing, to give them a competitive, to help balance the competition and give them extra picks. And it's been nice to have that little wrinkle of, like, you can use those to help sweeten the deal. If you're making a trade for a big leaguer and you have prospects, but you can also throw in draft picks, and they have a lot of value. It increases your bonus pool. So not only do you have the chance to get a really good player, picking, say, in the 30s, but it also expands your pool, so you can be a little more creative. And for people who don't know necessarily that, every team has a bonus pool for the top 10 rounds, and you can spend that money however you want. So you can save money with your first round pick and be aggressive with, say, a high school talent in rounds 3 or 4, that sort of thing. So having that extra money can come in handy. The Giants added a pick and now have a much larger pool, which has led them, people to think that they're trying to find a way to get Roch Cholowsky down to 4. That won't happen, but you can try to be a little more creative and aggressive because of that. The other picks are not tradable, as of right now, because they just haven't been agreed to in a collective bargaining agreement to do that.
So why can't you trade those picks? What's the art? Why have they said why can't we do this? Because you can do it in the other sports, and I think it could make some good cinema out of it.
I agree with you. I think it would add intrigue and interest in the draft. It would make our jobs, projecting the first round, virtually impossible. But that's okay. It's hard enough now with the bonus pool system. Uh, it's not in the rules. I mean, that's the main reason why it doesn't happen right now. I think some have argued that there'd be fear of punting picks on, to not have to spend money in the draft. There was fear with that, even with the bonus pool system,
Right.
and that hasn't happened. I think even teams that don't value, say, draft and farm systems as much as others, and they all do to an extent now. Even the teams that spend mightily at the big league level understand you need to have a farm system, even if it's to use for trades. No one's punted the draft, so I'm not worried about that, and I think you could probably ease into it and not necessarily have up to the last minute trades. Now that obviously adds excitement when that happens in the other sports. Like right before a pick, there's a trade. But if for people who are a little more nervous about this sort of thing, you could probably cut it off. Um, However, wherever you want, it's an arbitrary line. So I think it would be great. I would love to see, the Giants really, really want Roch Cholowsky, so trade up to get that number one pick.
Yeah.
If you were the White Sox, I think I would listen and maybe take the number 4 and the number 29 or wherever that other pick the Giants picked up, you know, to do that. I think that sort of thing would be exciting to see.
Yeah, and especially with it being close to the trade deadline. So, like, the Rays are in a spot right now where they have number two, and they are having a pretty good year. Obviously, the Rays are not a team that have a lot of money. So, what if they just said, you know what, we're gonna take that number two pick and we're gonna trade for Scooble or whatever the trade is,
Sure.
right? That would be it. And then now, I think what would be cool about it is you pull in a lot of people who may not pay as much attention to the draft, but they get excited with the trade deadline. If you're kind of bringing these two things together.
It would change the value of what a draft pick is to in a way that could be defined for the more general fan, right? So if you don't follow the draft at all, and I feel like if you're like a I think most people at least pay attention to who like your team takes in the first round, but you still don't know how to value it. But then you trade it for for a couple months of Scooble or whatever it is. Then you're like, oh, okay, that's what that means.
Right.
I think it changes the currency in so way. So I think I think that could be really interesting. Hey, I mean, listen, the White Sox are kind of ahead of schedule. Maybe I you would have to take a lot probably to get them to not pick 1-1 because they're still sort of yes they're ahead of schedule but they're still rebuilding, but they could decide to wait. They could decide, listen, we're close. Let's go in now and trade down a little bit.
Yeah, and then it maybe accelerates the trade deadline too. You start getting some trades before the draft potentially,
Sure.
which is good entertainment for everybody. We love these trades. It's fun. So maybe we'll see that in the next CBA. Who knows? But I want to ask you, Jonathan, about the White Sox here because I got Jim's perspective. Where do you think the wind is blowing with this pick?
I'm doing the mock this week and I'm just starting to ask around, but I think Jim and I are in about the same place, give or take. I think that it's really going to come down to Roch Cholowsky or Grady Emerson. I don't think Vahn Lackey from Georgia Tech is completely out of the question, but I feel like that's much more of a fallback. The last time I sort of put odds on it was 40-40-20. I think Jim had it skewed a little bit more. I don't remember what he said exactly, but
I think he said he switched from because I was listening to your guys' podcast. In the 2 weeks, it's moved. It's like betting lines are moving kind of thing. He had 45-45 for those two, and then 10 for Lackey.
right. So it's basically decreasing the Lackey, but keeping Emerson and Cholowsky on the same level.
Yeah,
And
he had a slight edge to Rock. I think the last time we talked.
okay, right. Although he put them at the same odds. Uh,
No, the last time he
well,
had
the last
45,
time, yeah.
40, 15. Yeah,
And some of that is just the more we talk to people, the more we feel that the industry thinks Emerson might be the best actual player in the draft, and so I think we're sort of shifting accordingly based on that, and maybe we shouldn't. I do think that there are people within that scouting department who would prefer Grady Emerson, and then it's just going to be a question of who ultimately is making the call. Cholowsky presumably would get there faster. Things of that nature. So I think it's going to be a very spirited debate in that draft room, and it's kind of happened year after year, Jack, that teams aren't really making that ultimate decision until last minute. I think they're using the clock to try to help negotiate, and this is probably going to be a lot of spirited debate because there are good arguments for both of them. Both are very very good players. So I think it's just a question of whether or not they feel the pressure to take the guy with the track record in college who presumably will get to Chicago relatively quicker, though we've certainly seen some high school guys who have made it to the big leagues just as fast as some college guys, and Emerson could be that kind of player also.
with Lackey is part of the reason why he may not be in that conversation with those two for the White Sox because he's a catcher and they have Kyle Teal, or is it just that he's not quite in that tier?
More the latter. I don't think when you're picking at the very top, you worry about need or what you have in your system or on your major league roster. Now, if everything else is equal, then maybe not. But they also have Colson Montgomery. They have you can make that argument at shortstop. Obviously, you can move a shortstop to other positions a little more readily
Right.
than a catcher. I don't I don't think that they wouldn't take Lackey because of Teal being there. I just think he's not quite at the same level as Cholowsky and Emerson. It's if they're one, let's say they're 1 and 1A, then he's very close to. I don't think he's not like quite Adley Rutschman in terms of what people thought of him in the draft. So I think that's why he's not quite in that conversation.
Yeah, is there any hesitancy when taking a catcher when you had, Adley Rutschman, obviously good player. Bobby Witt Jr. was the pick behind Adley Rutschman, and Henry Davis he was a number one. So is there any hesitancy with maybe limitations when it comes to catcher versus shortstop? You can move the guy really anywhere on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting argument because there's a dearth of catching, in the minor leagues and good catching in the big leagues, but you only carry two, right, in the big leagues, and you're not certainly not going to take a guy who ends up as a backup. Putting Henry Davis aside for a minute because they were trying to be creative with their bonus pool a little bit. It wasn't that huge of a
Right.
reach that year, but it's interesting that you bring up Rushman and Witt because obviously different positions, but the Cholowsky Emerson argument feels very similar to the Rushman Witt argument, where had the
It
Orioles
does.
taken Bobby Witt Jr., no one would have been like, "What are you doing?" Right? It, Adley Rutschman was clearly the top guy, and I think that for much of this year, even starting back in December when we put our draft top 100, Cholowsky fit that description. He's clearly the number one guy, and he's been our number one guy since. So there are some similarities there. I feel that the gap between he and Grady Emerson has vanished, while the gap between Rutschman and Witt, while very, very small, was still there. Not by a lot. And yes, hindsight with what Bobby Witt has been doing. Uh, yeah. And I think Witt was slightly more dynamic than Grady Emerson, just to the speed factor and things like that. But that college versus high school argument, I think, is the same. It's interesting this year because they both play the same position. So there are
Yeah.
scouts who are like, will say, well, Grady Emerson's better than Roch Cholowsky was in high school. And so, 3 years from now, I think a lot of people think he'd be better than Roch Cholowsky is now. So why don't you take Emerson? And that's where that argument comes into play.
Who would you take?
Emerson. But if I pick number two, I'd be very happy to let number one make the decision, then take whoever, you know, and that's not, without, if it was just in a vacuum, picking number two without contemplating what the Rays might want or not want.
So the latest mock, you've got a mock coming out this week, and we'll be checking that one out. So everyone, make sure you guys are looking up MLB Pipeline and getting the newsletter and everything because it's good stuff. But the latest mock had Lackey going to Emerson 3 to the Twins, Rays picking 2, Lackey. Now I think there's been so much discussion about those three at the top, and something that you guys noticed. Here's a quote from Jim in the latest mock. He says, "Now we're on to the second tier guys. It's Jacob Lombard, Jackson Flora, clearly the best college pitcher this year, and Eric Booth Jr." I don't feel like I don't think many people who follow the draft very casually know a whole lot about these guys. So let's go through it. Jacob Lombard, I know he played soccer in high school, right? Did you get a chance to chat World Cup with him at all, the combine?
We did, and we actually did a fun. I can't take any credit for it. Kelsey Hennigan, our social media guru, led the charge
Biz
on this
Guru.
one. Um, because of the World Cup, she had as many prospects as were willing, and most of them were willing to see how they could do in juggling a soccer ball.
I saw that.
And the crazy thing, I mean, so Jacob Lombard did the best, but he was. It's not just that he played soccer. Like he's a really good soccer player. He could play that. He could play it at the next level, whatever that is, the D1 college, whatever he wanted to do. I think. Um, Roch Cholowsky, who never played soccer, did exceedingly well, which shows you what kind of athlete he is, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it did come up. You know, Lombard, of course, his older brother is George Lombard Jr. He's the Yankees' top prospect. Their dad is George Lombard, the former big leaguer, coach for the Tigers, so big baseball family, and super athlete. There were some questions over the summer about his swing and miss that he answered this spring. So that's why he's kind of come. He can definitely play shortstop. He can really run. Just a very athletic family, and both he and his brother play shortstop, and um, plus makeup kid. So he belongs in that 4 to 6 range. And again, some of that will just depend on whether teams want a high school bat or what they're looking for.
So Flora is the best college pitcher, uh, is what Jim wrote here. What does he do well? What makes him special?
I mean, he's really good. I think in another year, if he were, he could be a 1-1. I mean, he's 6'5". He's got a fastball that touches triple digits with the kind of metrics and characteristics that people like to see in a fastball now: carry, arm side run. He's got 2 different kinds of sliders. The changeup has come a long way. That Santa Barbara program has done a very good job of developing pitchers. Tyler Bremner was the number 2 pick in last year's draft, and Bremner had better feel to pitch probably than Flora, but Flora's pure stuff is better. And you just listen to him talking about pitching, and you're like, it's amazing to me when you hear these young pitchers be able to talk about their craft, and he knows what he needs to do to succeed at the next level. But we're talking 4 pitches, at least above average to plus. And even though he doesn't have the same feel of pitch that Bremer had, he throws a lot of strikes, and he is the one he's the one college pitcher who posted every single week for Santa Barbara.
It's interesting. You mentioned that in another year he could be 1-1. Is this a stronger draft than average, would you say?
Up top, I think is very good, and I just think that there are position players who make more sense. You have to be a really special college arm to go 1-1. You think back to even a couple of years ago, there were people who were like, you can't take Paul Skeens, right? You can't take a pitcher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's like Skeens, Strasburg, David Price.
Why do they think that way? Because they only pitch 1 out of 5 days?
I think that's it. And then the injury risk, right? You just don't know. I mean, there's obviously risk with any of them, but you want to make sure you get 1-1 right. And in this case, there are everyday players at premium positions to consider, and I think that gets the edge. And Florida's not quite like he wasn't in the SEC. The competition he faced wasn't as good. The command is good, but not. There's enough to deduct, tenths of a point if you have it in some sort of weird scoring system that he doesn't quite fit in that top of the draft. But he's a guy who I think could enter a system and be your top pitching prospect and move pretty quickly because I think the stuff is going to play.
So the last one from this group is Eric Booth Jr. And I always think it's interesting because when it comes to these high school kids, most of us don't ever see them. At least I'm somebody who I've not watched Grady Emerson play. I'm not watching Fort Worth High School baseball. Unfortunately, I would love to. I would love to do that,
Sure.
but it's not very accessible. Or maybe it is. Maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. Tell me a little bit about Eric Booth Jr. And then the last thing I want to know about these guys, is there any way that any of them could crack into the top three?
So I'll answer the second part first. It
Yeah, go
doesn't.
for it.
It doesn't. It doesn't sound like it. The there's like a name or two that's come up in rumors in the top three that would be like you're cutting a deal. Lombard's name was being mentioned for a little while at 1-1 as that sort of like backup really save money. And I think as we've discovered, no one signs for full slot at 1-1. It's such a huge amount of money that you're going to save money regardless of who you pick. So right now the slot for top of the draft is 11.3 million. All right, so let's say you're going to take Grady Emerson, and Emerson's people say, he's going to, he's going to go number two, and that's full slot is 10.5. So the White Sox could offer around that and still save $1 million, right? And that's for
Right.
Emerson. And even for Cholowsky, the same thing. Like, is he going to turn down 10 million? Like, again, not that the Rays are going to give full slot to whoever they take two. So all that comes into play. I don't. So outside of Lombard's name popping up a little bit at one, I've not heard either Lombard, Flora, or even Booth in those top six. And honestly, I haven't heard Booth higher than 5 to the Pirates. That doesn't mean that the Giants wouldn't entertain him. He's really interesting. He's super athletic. He's almost a top of the scale runner. He's going to grow into some more power. He's become more polished this year. Um, it's a really intriguing combination of athleticism and the baseball polish is starting to come. Uh, you know, so he could end up being, looking back, the most exciting player in the class. I think having him go to the Pirates is certainly a fun storyline because they did have some success with taking a Toolsy high school position player from Mississippi a couple of years ago.
That they did. That's very true. How was the draft combine? And I'm sure that some people who are maybe just tuning in to try to figure out a little bit of stuff about the draft, maybe they're not following this stuff. How does the draft combine differ from other sports? And I mean, we've only had this now. This is the 6th year, I believe.
Yep. It's, I think in some ways it's similar in that all of the sport is in one place and a huge amount of the top, say, 300 players, and I don't know how many people go to, say, the NFL Combine, but are on hand. I think where it's different is that you don't necessarily get all the top players doing things on the field or doing the testing. People who think the combine, they think the NFL Combine, and you're seeing like all the potential first round guys running the 60 and all that kind of that kind of thing. And a lot of the top guys come to the combine, and sometimes all they're doing is meeting with teams and getting their medical testing done. The medical testing has become important because in order, if you do your medical testing at the combine, you're guaranteed a certain offer if you're taken within 80%. I don't remember what the exact number is, but it is everybody in one place. And for us, from a content standpoint, we talk to a whole lot of the top guys on the board because even if they're coming in just to meet with teams and do their medicals, they're available for interviews. So we knocked out a whole lot of interviews for the combine, and we just ran one with Jacob Lombard on our last week's podcast. We'll have another one for next week. and we'll have a lot of feature stories for that. So, and then there is some on-field stuff. There's a lot of players who do batting practice, throw bullpens. There's a simulated game with high school players. That's it's not like the top guys, but this year, Jack, like not the game necessarily, although some guys played in that game. More top high school hitters. It's more high school guys than college guys, but more top high school hitters actually participated, just in taking BP and doing infield outfield than I feel has happened in the past few years. So that raised the level of what we're seeing, and there were even some very interesting guys who played in that sim game, both like potential first round comp guys, and then some of the sort of projectable high school pitchers who invariably go. I don't want to say day 2 anymore because day 1 goes through the 4th round, but could be 3rd, 4th round, maybe 11th round, whatever, get overpaid to sign.
Who was there anyone that you were just kind of excited to see that maybe popped off a little bit from the combine? I know that there's a guy with the last name of Bonds that they made some good content out of watching him hit.
Yeah, he was a fun one because his name was Peyton Bonds from Rutgers University, and that's Barry's nephew, so Bobby Jr.'s son, and he was kind of creeping up boards and then got hurt and missed most of the rest of the year. He came back at the very end for a handful of at-bats, and so this was an ability to see him healthy, and he was the kind of player that you're like, I think he's probably going to put on a show because he's big, he's super athletic. The exit velocities are going to be good as a college guy. Another guy that sort of jumped off the page is a high school guy, Jensen Veras. His dad, Jose, was a reliever for a long time. He's a corner outfield type. Again, big, huge physical specimen, high school guy from Florida. He put up some of the best exit velocities in batting practice that you're going to see. I did not see his outfield, but he is the kind of guy that I would imagine, he's got an above average plus arm. One of those guys that is going to do well in a showcase setting. So those are the two off the top of my head. There were a bunch of guys who put up some really interesting numbers. And listen, it's not going to move the needle in any huge way unless you're showing that you're healthy. I mean, Logan Redmond threw a bullpen, and the UCLA ace who missed the last 6 weeks with first what was called arm fatigue, later described as a flexor strain. He seems fine. And he wasn't throwing 98, 99 like he was, but he didn't walk off the mound shaking his arm. Obviously, he's going to do the MRI. People are going to see what's inside there, and just seeing him throw healthy and throw all of his pitches was encouraging, and probably helped him, along with his meetings in the medical, to convince teams that he's good to go.
So I got an idea of how we could maybe spice up the combine a little bit as we keep growing this thing, and it is growing. So you know how Rich Eisen runs the 40-yard dash each year at the NFL Combine?
Don't you dare suggest what I think you're going to suggest.
How about we get you and Jim, little home run derby action, little BP session for charity?
I think nothing would lead to injuries more than an idea like that. So I'm gonna pass. We did talk about having Jesse Borek, who I know you know.
Love Jesse.
Who is younger and in much better shape, at least than I am. And we had an idea of him doing all the different testing.
Oh
things.
Yeah.
And I think it was we never quite got to getting that done, but I love the idea of the experiential thing. And kudos to Rich Eisen for continuing to do that, but no thanks.
So I'm gonna throw a quick player comp at you because I was eating up the College World Series. I'm sad it's over. I woke up Saturday morning and I'm like, this is the first Saturday we haven't had college sports since last August. It doesn't feel right. Like
Going through withdrawal.
Get me to August. Yeah. Owen Hull was one of my favorite guys to watch down the stretch of the College World Series. Reminds me a little bit of Cody Bellinger. Do you see it?
I hate comps, but I'll
I
play
actually did
along.
not know that. I
Oh
know
yeah,
you know who
both.
loves comps? Dan O'Dowd. Every time I tell him about a guy, who's the comp, Jack? What do you think? I'm like,
Well,
oh,
and they love that.
okay.
On the draft broadcast and things like that, they love comps. And Jim and I always like. I don't love them. I could see it. It can run. Yeah, I'll play along.
Lengthy lefty bat. I
Yeah,
was impressed with him.
yeah.
I
No,
like
I mean
him.
he had a terrific postseason. So you saw him at his best, and you
Right.
saw him get to his power, and so yeah. I
Well, that
won't.
was the thing with Bellinger. He hit like one home run his senior year of high school.
I will not dismiss that out of hand. How's that?
Okay. All right. Well, he's Jonathan Mayo. He's got books, podcasts. Tell everybody what you're working on and how they can check it all out.
Well, all our stuff is at MLB Pipeline, and the side hustle is the book and podcast project I'm working on with my wife, which is called Something Worth Saving. Uh, we did one on Asheville, Stories of Resilience. It was a four-part series that we went to a bunch of different minor league cities to talk about what makes community, and the pillars being minor league baseball and the arts, but really any third spaces where people gather. So breweries, coffee shops, and we're actually working on our next season on Cedar Rapids. The offshoot of that was a TV show called Grassroots, Routes. That's been on MLB Network. You can find it on YouTube or MLB.com. Or we've done 5 episodes to date. Let's see if I can remember them all: Portland, Asheville, Montgomery, Alabama, Rochester, New York, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Some of those are in the book, some are not. The TV show is much more baseball forward because it's an MLB joint, but it's been a lot of fun, sort of looking at how minor league teams are woven into the fabric of communities.
Maybe you could come to Winnetka some point, do something on youth baseball here.
That would be a deep dive, but you never know.
He's Jonathan Mayo. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today, pal. Always great talking with you.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
All right, y'all. That concludes our conversation today with Jonathan Mayo from MLB Pipeline. Always love talking with him. He's a great guy. Spent plenty of time in the press box with him at spring training parks in the fall for the Arizona Fall League. Lots of good memories. And hard to believe we're only a few months out from that. I'm kind of itching to get back there. It's one of my favorite sports things each year, sports events. Arizona Fall League. Highly recommend. If you live in Arizona, get out to a game this year. If you don't, travel out there. It's great. I love it. We are going to have more content coming soon. The draft is only 2 weeks away, so make sure you guys are all subscribed to this YouTube channel. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are found. That is Jack Vita Show Sports is the feed. I also host another show called Jack Vita Show Entertainment. Lots of reality TV content over there for the Survivor fans. We've been talking with Stephanie LaGrossa Kendrick in the aftermath of Survivor 50. She's been spilling the tea, doing a little deep dive. So check out that YouTube channel. Check out that podcast feed if you're interested. But for the sports, it's Jack Vita Show Sports. You can follow me on social media at Jack Vita Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We'll be back again soon. And until then, I'm Jack Vita. Bring in the dancing lobsters.